we'll get started. So that's the name of the of the talk, and here we go. I saw this, as you can see, on February 10th. This, of course, had to do with Trump's second impeachment trial. And I thought I would just start today with this because it really caught my eye, because what the House impeachment managers did is what I do in my lecturing. So as it says here, I've underlined it, House impeachment managers built their case against former President Donald J. Trump on Wednesday, methodically using video and audio clips to argue that he was responsible for the deadly assault on the Capitol on January 6th. So keep that in mind, okay, that this is how the House impeachment managers did this in the Senate chamber of the United States, okay? And everybody, even Republicans who voted to acquit Donald Trump, seem to have conceded that they did a remarkable job in building their case. So, quick warning, most of this presentation consists of video and audio, but there will also be some information slides that contain blocks of text, which I'll be reading aloud. And one more thing, I developed the method being shown here, lecture. The class pandemic lockdown was imposed last March. I moved it more or less seamlessly online in recorded form without any significant loss in efficacy. So, in days of yore, traditionally, it was conventional for post-secondary instructors to lecture for an entire class period, in the sense that the instructor would just talk and students would listen and take notes. Occasionally, instructors would make use of transparencies on overhead projectors, remember those, and or handouts, and every now and then they'd show a film intended to supplement the lecture in some way. Of course, the only way for the instructor to indicate which particular elements of the film they wanted the students to focus on would be to tell them beforehand to watch for those elements, or to have them cast their minds back to certain scenes when lecturing afterwards. With the coming of the internet, instructors have been able to make use of shorter length video, audio material rather than entire films. But this is generally found on websites that must first be opened, for example, by clicking on hyperlinks, which takes time and is distracting for students. In the case of a website, first it has to load, and then the material housed on it must be activated by the instructor, which often includes locating desired starting and ending points within a longer clip. Thus, even in the case of shorter videos, a deficient relationship between speech and video audio remains, with the latter still interrupting the overall flow of the lecture. But what if material extraneous to the instructor's specific didactic points could be removed from video audio excerpts? It can. There are readily available editing applications, such as iMovie, for which I'll give a quick tutorial later. Now, I want to stress that for reasons of professionalism and ethics, the original meaning of the clip would, of course, be maintained in the edited version. We're not into deep fakes here or anything like that, or twisting the meaning of what the clip is. And what if video audio excerpts could be embedded within the presentation program, for example, PowerPoint or Keynote, thus eliminating any pause in the shift between verbal and video audio modalities? They can, and I'll show you that in the tutorial as well. What are the advantages of this? Well, there's a constant forward momentum, meaning that student attention is more likely to be maintained. With one modality amplified and reinforced by the other, there's a contextualization of information within a more expansive scaffolding. You're not just imparting evidence, you're anchoring that evidence in feelings and in emotions. Is there support for this in educational theory? Totally. Famed educational psychologist Richard Mayer has shown that multimedia learning is more efficacious than using the verbal component alone. The more formats in which we receive information, the more easily our brains hold on to that information. The encoding, consolidation, and retrieval of memory is enhanced by multimodal delivery. Now, before we continue, a word about the possible problems with doing a presentation like this via a video conferencing platform. it is possible that when I play the video and audio, there may be some glitches. You might hear a whooshing sound, for example. The audio may cut out. There may be a 1 or 2 second delay, that sort of thing. Okay. And also, I hope that the volume is at the right level. Because if it's not, I need somebody to say it in the chat, and then I need Heather to interrupt me to tell me that I need to modulate it. So let's start with how we can use
some fine video, some beautiful video, some new video, a little more video.
Okay, so that's an example of some video editing that I did. And it's taken from SCTV. That's Rick Moranis playing on the Jerry Todd Show. And I just remember that he would always talk about video. And so I went and I got that from YouTube and I made a little clip out of it. What can I do with video clips? Well, there's duplication of lecture points in part or in full, and perhaps with some new material. There's complementation of lecture points. You can put in entirely new material that amplifies a lecture point. You can select a lecture. You can use it as a hook for a full lecture or section of a lecture. You can use it for irony, to illustrate a popular misconception to be addressed and then corrected or refuted, or just for comic relief. So here's an example of an introductory clip. This is from a course on the Hebrew Bible, which is called the Old Testament by Christians. That's my original area of expertise, Hebrew Bible, Ancient Near East. Note that there are no preceding lecture points. I will start my lecture with this the keynote will always be playing concurrent to the lecture. I won't say anything. I will just start the lecture by playing this.
The Old Testament is composed of a series of books, which is the very definition of the word Bible. Ta Biblia, which in Greek means the books. It is a collection of legal texts, poems, and moral reflections, and a history book of the creation of the world and the people of Israel. It was the first book ever to be printed.
Here's an example of a concluding clip. This would be subsequent to my closing points in a lecture in a course that I teach called Apocalypse. So I finish talking and then I play this as a sort of a closer.
The end of the world. It's been part of our imagination for thousands of years. In every age, there have been preachers and prophets who've cried that the end is nigh, people who predicted humanity's demise and claim to know exactly when it's going to happen.
The world is coming to an end.
There are always believers, those who rally behind the vision, who sacrifice everything, even their lives for it. And yet, through all those prophecies, we're still here.
Here's an example of an anticipating clip. This is from a course that I teach on new religious movements. The lecture is about Family Federation for World Peace and Unification. Previously, these people were known as the Moonies. Note that there are no preceding lecture points. I don't say anything, and I start the lecture by playing this from the keynote.
The leader of the Unification Church has died. Reverend Sun Myung Moon founded the church in the 1950s and proclaimed himself the Messiah. Fame in the 70s and 80s for presiding over mass weddings involving thousands of couples, critics accuse the church of being a cult that demands obedience from its followers. Moon was 92.
So as soon as that's over, I then say this. On September 3rd, 2012, September 2nd in North America, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, the founder of an organization initially called Holy Spirit Association for the Unification of World Christianity, the shorthand for which was the Unification Church, died at the age of 92 near Seoul, the capital of South Korea. And then I'd probably show a map of Seoul, South Korea. Here's an example of a summarizing clip. This is from my Apocalypse course as well. The lecture is on the book of Daniel. So here are the lecture points that precede the clip. The logic of the communal prayer of confession in Daniel 9 runs entirely contrary to the apocalyptic framework of Daniel 7 to 12 as a whole. Instead, it accords with the theology found in one strand of the Hebrew Bible, that Israelite suffering results from disobeying God's commandments, and if the Israelites are faithful to him, he'll restore their fortunes.
The Israelites had made a contract with God. If they kept it, God would reward them. If they broke it, he would punish them. Punish them by using foreign powers as his instruments.
Here's an example of a hook clip. This is from my Western religions course. The lecture is on the ancient faith known as Zoroastrianism. Note that there are no preceding lecture points. I don't say anything, and I start with this.
One of the oldest and most influential religions in the world, but it's one most of us have never heard of. It's called Zoroastrianism.
Here's an example of a comedic clip. This is as well. The lecture is on Judaism. Here are the points preceding the clip. On Hanukkah, Jewish parents traditionally give gifts to their children, sometimes a gift a night. But since Hanukkah is a so-called minor Jewish holiday, our gifts, I'm Jewish by the way, haven't always been that great.
On night 1, we get socks. On night 2, a notebook. On night 3, a pen and pencil set. It's a back-to-school holiday.
Okay, so even Rachel Maddow is doing it. So Rachel Maddow has a show on MSNBC, and recently she was talking about Trump's impeachment trial, his second one, and pointing out how absolutely dreadful the defense attorneys were. They kept making errors with respect to words. They were malapropisms. And then she said, this reminds me of something from Saturday Night Live. And then she played a clip of Emily Latella, played by Gilda Radner, who would come on to Weekend Update and talk about things that she had always misunderstood or misheard. So, for example, what's all this I hear about Soviet jewelry? But it was supposed to be Soviet Jewry. Or what's all this I hear about violins on television? In fact, of course, it's violence. And in fact, that's the one that Rachel Maddow used. In other words, she used humor to make her point. So I took a little bit of her segment that night on this, and I made this to illustrate what I'm talking about.
Incitement to resurrection. The victorial speech needs to stop. Each of these individuals should be retroactively censored.
What's all this fuss I keep hearing about violins?
So you see, the use of comedy, of humor, is very powerful as a lecturing technique. Now here's an example of a GIF clip. This is from a course on the U.S. religious right that I give. The lecture is on the civil rights movement. Okay, GIFs are these little 2-second, 3-second things. You can find them, of course. Now you can send them, people send them back and forth. They're like the latest thing for the last 10 years. And there are tons of them, okay? So here are the lecture points that precede the clip. It was the NAACP that sponsored the 1954 Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court case that led to the desegregation of public schools. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court set no time limit for the states to desegregate their school systems. It called instead for desegregation, quote, with all deliberate speed. This wording led to years of conflict over the issue.
Not a great plan.
Things like that are very, very effective. That, of course, is from the first Marvel Avengers movie, and that is Robert Downey Jr. playing Tony Stark, Iron Man, and he's having a conversation with Loki, but you don't see Loki, okay? And this has sort of become something that gets played over and over, and you can stick these little things in. The students really, really respond well to it. It's just a 3-second or 2-second clip, but it makes the point, and it breaks up the monotony of just talking. And alongside video, we got audio. So that's from the song Audio by a guy called LSD. I just made a quick song clip of it to just sort of tell you that alongside video, we got audio. You see how you can use video and audio to just sort of, amplify what you're doing. So what can I do with song clips? Well, to reinforce a lecture point. After beginning a Hebrew Bible lecture with these points, I can immediately play something. Okay, so the origins of the chief protagonist of the Hebrew Bible, the Israelite deity Yahweh, are shrouded in mystery. Using a combination of biblical texts, epigraphic, that is inscriptional evidence, and archaeological testimony, scholars have attempted to uncover Yahweh's origins. But thus far, we cannot say that we've identified Yahweh's beginnings conclusively. You can use a hook individual lecture section. For example, to begin a lecture on the history of feminism in the United States, this is my course on the U.S. religious right, I could play this. Sail on, sail on, your time has come. Shine on your dreams on. And when you get good with the editing, you will realize that there are so many possibilities. These are parts of segments that aired the same night in 2011 on The Daily Show with Jon Stewart and the Colbert Report that I have edited together so that the two of them speak to each other as though it were, a conversation. And yet, of course, they were not together when they did this.
If you want an abortion, you go to Planned Parenthood. Well over 90% of what Planned Parenthood does.
Over 90%. That is unbelievable, in that it is not true. Only 3% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortions. Kyle just rounded up to the nearest 90.
Wow, well over 90% of what Planned Parenthood does is abortions. That's nearly 100% abortions. I'd love to see that statistic checked by anyone.
The number of procedures done by Planned Parenthood, abortion services only account for about 3%. There are other ways of looking at it, but overall, it's just false.
I get those numbers mixed up a lot. The 90% is 90%. That's why I've been buying 90% milk, and or you really have to eat it with a fork. So 90% to 3%. Luckily, John Kyle has a reasonable explanation.
We did call his office trying to ask what he was talking about there. And I just want to give it to you verbatim here. It says his remark was not intended to be a factual statement, but rather to illustrate that Planned Parenthood, an organization that receives millions in taxpayer dollars, does subsidize abortions.
An amazingly liberating defense. Now I can say things like John Kyle has a vestigial tail. What do you think it would be? Note, that was not intended to be a factual statement.
No, that's okay. Now it makes sense. John Kyle spends 90% of his time in the Senate drooling and farting. That is a statistic of fact. I mean that at times he probably produces saliva and methane. When?
So here's an excerpt of a lecture that I give. Okay, it's from my Politics and Religion course. The lecture is on Al-Qaeda. Now, I created this little snippet with Loom recording software, which is free for teachers. So you'll see me in a little oval in the right, and then, of course, you'll see the clips playing as well. So it's I speak, then there's a clip. I speak, there's a clip. I speak, there's a clip. That sort of thing. This is about 3 minutes long. On September 11, 2001 at 8:46 a.m., American Airlines Flight 11 flew into the North Tower of the World Trade Center in Manhattan which collapsed 42 minutes later.
We just got a report in that there's been some sort of explosion at World Trade Center in New York City.
Looking at the World Trade Center, we understand that a plane has crashed into the World Trade Center. We don't know anything more than that.
Jamie, I need you to stop for a second. There has just been a huge explosion. I'll tell you that I can't see that second tower.
At 9:03 a.m., United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower, which crumbled to the ground 1 minute before 10 a.m.
Of course, the major concern is human loss.
Another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over other.
At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines 77 of the Pentagon, Arlington, Virginia.
Got a live picture from Washington.
A lot of confusion. Again, it appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon.
At 10:06 a.m., United Airlines Flight 93 went down in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, when passengers stormed the cockpit and fought with the hijackers who purportedly wanted to fly the plane into the White House or the U.S. Capitol building.
Pittsburgh. Don't know where their destination was, what their target was. They were short of the target.
All told, the attacks killed nearly 3,000 people and injured more than 6,000. Al-Qaeda called the assault the Manhattan Raid, the Big Wedding, and Holy Tuesday.
I can tell you about evacuations. Time.
Morning, the 11th of September, and you will never forget this date.
My city of Cruel. My city of...
So, I just wanted to show you a publication that I just did. This is a teaching journal. It's Cascade Journal of Knowledge. It was started only last year. And the idea is that since students are going to YouTube to get their information, they're no longer reading books and they're no longer reading print articles and that in journals and that sort of thing, then that means that faculty are going to have to reach them a different way. And so the editor-in-chief of Cascade Journal of Knowledge has come up with the idea of double-blind, peer-reviewed screencasts, anywhere from about 3 to 9 minutes long. And the idea is that they serve as knowledge modules to be consulted by students so that they're getting the proper information from authorities, and it's a publication. It is an actual publication. So this is the opening of a screencast that I published at the end of December on the concept of 666 in the book of Revelation.
On 666, then, some of you may recall the strange affair, a mystery never fully explained.
Even those who are unacquainted with Christianity and or the Bible probably know that 666 is supposed to be of the dark, of evil, of the infernal. Specifically, it's said to be the number of the beast.
Let anyone with understanding calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a person. Number 666.
The concept of 666 has figured in myriad works and compositions since its advent a little under 2 millennia ago. For example, the 1976 supernatural horror film The Omen, in which a man finds the number imprinted on the scalp of his adopted son, Damien. Because it's double-blind peer-reviewed, all these screencasts cannot feature the professor at all. You can't show yourself in the screencast. So of course, in that case, I'm just the disembodied voice, and so is everybody else who's done one of these screencasts. At the moment, I think there are about 10 that have been posted. And on the site, because it's a new journal. It's a teaching journal. Okay, so I'm just going to give you a 10-minute video and audio clip editing tutorial here. I use iMovie, and I don't know who's it. It's very popular, of course. It's the one that I know. And so I thought that it would be good for you to see how I go about doing this. And of course, as I say, full-length tutorials are available on YouTube. I watched only one to learn this. And 2 things to note before I play this 10-minute tutorial. Number 1, I recorded it with Loom and decided that it would work best if my head didn't appear in the video. So, as in the 666 screencast, I'm a disembodied voice. And 2, for some reason, Loom generated an orange circular flash on the screen every time I clicked something. That flash won't be there when you use iMovie in general. Let's say I'm giving a lecture on the history of organized crime in the United States, and I want to have a section about Las Vegas. And it occurs to me, as I'm creating my lecture, that there is a very well-known song called Blinding Lights by Canadian artist The Weeknd, which has to do with Las Vegas. The video takes place in Las Vegas, and there's mention of Sin City, which of course is one of the designations for Las Vegas. So what I've done is I have downloaded the official video, that's video on the desktop. I've also dragged the song out of my iTunes onto my desktop, that's the audio, and what we want to do is get the part that begins Sin City's cold and empty and goes for about 10 seconds. Okay, and we're going to insert it somewhere in the lecture section about Las Vegas, just to give it a sting, just to make it a little bit memorable. Okay, so we open up iMovie and press on Import Media, then choose Video, and press Import Selected. There will be a plus sign that you can, it says add the selection to the movie. So now it's down in the timeline. We have to take a look at View, make sure that you have waveforms and audio skimming checked. That's very important because we work with waveforms in audio skimming. And I prefer to have a larger clip size, so I'm just going to bring that along. And then I'm going to lengthen the whole thing out so I can see the whole thing. And it's about here, I think. Let's find out. Okay. Just a little bit earlier. So this is about where we want to begin it. Just a moment. Yep. Right here. Okay, so then to make your break, you press Command B. Then you highlight the part that you want to remove. Then you press Delete. And then it automatically left justifies. So now let's play our 10 seconds that we want. Okay, that's where we want to stop it. Once again, Command B. Highlight the part you want to remove. Delete. So now we've got our 10 seconds, and that is the clip we want to export. So we go to the top right, press share, we press export file. The format is video and audio. Resolution 720 is good. I like to compress better quality rather than faster. Press next. Give it a placeholder name A if you'd like. That's what I always do. And then press save. You can see progress and it's done. So let's just minimize this and make sure that we got what we wanted. So there it is, MP4. Let's open it up and play it. Perfect. Okay. Well, I want to now embed that clip. And we might as well name it, and then you can archive it. This one called Sin City, and the song Blinding Lights, which is by The Weeknd. I'm not going to bother with the strange way he does it. It is 10 seconds long, and that is now the name of our clip. Open up the Keynote. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag that in to the slide. It's as simple as that. Now in there, I've now got it centered. Now over here, I'm going to click on animate, and then I'm going to click change, and I would like none, because I want the thing to play immediately when I advance to the next slide. If you want to have a secondary click, then you leave it as at start movie, but I like none. Okay, then you press Command L, that locks it in. Now I've got the first one. So let's do the second one now. The second one, all I want to do for the second one, actually, for whatever reason, I've decided that I just want the video. Okay, I don't want the audio part of it. I just want to see this guy dancing around on the street. Okay, you wouldn't really want this for the part of the lecture about Las Vegas, probably, but you might want it for something else. I, for example, have been able to get some really good close video shots of cuneiform on tablets. I didn't like the voiceover, and I got rid of the voiceover. I just got a very close shot of a cuneiform tablet. So what you do here, I'm going to right-click here, and you get this whole thing here, and one of them is detach audio. Attach the audio, and there it is, and I'm going to highlight it, and then I'm going to delete it. Now I'm going to export again, okay, and this time I can call it A again, and once again save. And we do. Perfect. All right. Name that one. Let's call it video. Okay, and now let's drag it into our keynote. Third position. Okay. This one, the same thing we did before. Second one, okay, all that's left is the middle one, and that, as you can see by the background that I've chosen, is going to be the audio clip. That one, what we want to do then is highlight this in the thing, delete, right-click on the original, delete media from a. This time we're going to import audio, selected. Okay, you can see that all we have now is an audio file. Let's find the spot we want. Ooh, did well there, okay. Starts here. In this case, when you get rid of the part before, it doesn't automatically left justify, and the easiest thing to do is to make it to collapsed form again and just move it that way. And now we should have this at the beginning. Okay, it looks like it stops here. You can see the waveform change. Get the yellow spike there. Just make sure. Yep. Okay. And then we export the file, but this time we want it as audio only. And then we go next. Again. Save again. Now we're done. That. And we can do, that is just, we don't even have to name it. It doesn't matter for the moment. Afterwards, we drag it in, appear that way. We can just change that to none. That. Now let's see all three of our things play.
Judge me, I can see clearly when you're on. City's cold and empty. Judge me, I can see clearly when you're on.
Final thing is just a guy dancing on this. And that's it. We are done. And as I say, you can watch a tutorial. Okay, so I just want to show you something really quickly before we end. And I should say that that was not an orange flash. That was a yellow and green flash. Not orange. I don't know why I thought it was orange. And also, every now and then, I did little quick edits to get rid of some ums and whatever. And when I was, fiddling around with things. So if it looked a little bit jumpy in the video that I just showed you, that's because I did some editing in iMovie of the video about editing iMovie, in iMovie. Okay, so I just want to show you something from part of a lecture, the beginning of my lecture about Christianity. Okay, so this is the raw text. Christianity is a religion based on the teachings, death, and supposed resurrection of the figure that scholars generally call Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus was a Jewish man born a little over 2,000 years ago in Roman-occupied Palestine. He was executed by the Roman government on charges of sedition. This man would come to be called Christos by his followers. Christos is the Greek translation of Hebrew Mashiach, which means anointed one. His name in Hebrew was Yehoshua. There's the transliteration of it, meaning Yahweh saves. The Aramaic form of this is Yeshua. The Greek form is Jesus. The Latin form is Jesus. From Latin Jesus, we get English Jesus, thus Jesus Christ. It must be stressed that Jesus of Nazareth lived and died a Jew. The faith that he inspired began as a Jewish sect. Jesus' first disciples were Jewish. Okay, so that's the raw text. And in the past, 15 years ago, whatever, we would have, even 10 years ago probably, all we could do would be maybe just sort of, show a map or something like that. But mostly we just talk it. We just talk it out and I guess try and make our voice sound really interesting or something. But this is what this looks like now as I play the keynote concurrent to the text. Okay? Everything in bold there is something in the keynote, okay? And I'm not going to read through the whole thing again for you, but basically that's what my lectures look like, scripts, because I'm running this keynote concurrent to the lecture. And if you will go through the whole thing, you will see, and I've got it below the solid line, that there are 3 video clips now 55, 45, and 20 seconds long each, one song clip, 20 seconds, two maps, one slide to give the names, and then two scriptural visual aids. Whenever you see accordance in italics, that's a program that I use to show biblical verses and names and that sort of thing. So I start with one of my introductory clips. And as soon as I say Jesus Christ, I play the part from the Elton John song Leave On, where he says, he calls his child Jesus. Why not? It's cool and means I'm not talking for 20 seconds. And then Jesus' first disciples were Jewish. So then, bang, I immediately play a clip that's 45 seconds long about Jesus as Jewish. And then to finish, it can't be stressed enough that the matrix of Christianity was Judaism. Bang, another 20-second clip about the Jewish matrix of Christianity. So this is how you can spice up your lectures. You can make your lectures into presentations that are engaging and draw the students in. And in that way, you can lecture for as long as you want online as well as in the classroom. So just some final thoughts. Lecturing requires revitalization urgently because ostensibly educational material is just a click away for students. The synergizing of speech and video audio can help to generate broader student interest and enthusiasm by grounding lectures in the real world and making them significantly more relatable for today's students. The internet and smartphones have changed the way in which human beings receive and process information. We have far shorter attention spans, and this is perhaps even more so the case with today's students who have never known a non-wired world. The game has changed. If we do not engage with students in conformity with how they consume information, we are destined to lose the game.